Why did you guys decide to do this ban?
Every May we put out a teacher survey, and I was noticing that our teachers it was only like 50% of our teaching staff that was saying they felt effective in their job. And as an administrator, I can't imagine feeling that way, that teachers pour a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into their daily job, and to know that at the end of the day our staff was not feeling effective, we started having discussions about why. And cell phones came up, and the fact that students just felt that they could pull out their phone at any time. And it wasn't just friends and social media that was attractive. Their parents were contacting them on their phone in the middle of the day. And so when they would say, well, it's my mom. And so it's how do you go against that a parent is trying to get a hold of their child in the middle. So teachers had no standing to confront this. And so it constantly was a battle. They were feeling like this distraction was making it so that they could not teach all these lessons they were planning. They were not getting through during the day because cell phone distractions were a major issue. I mean, you do have students who would listen to the teacher and put it away right away, and then you have other students who wouldn't. And so a teacher had to decide what battles to fight. And if they took that on, it was a power struggle, because what are you going to do at that point? We didn't have a policy. And so it came out of that teacher survey over a year ago that we needed to do something different. And so we had 100% of our staff on board to try something new. And in 2019, Newsom actually made it possible for us to do it. And so we took advantage and put a no personal device policy in place.
If you like California Insider and you like to know what's going on in California, make sure to check out Epoch Times. This is a newspaper that started by a group of Chinese Americans because of human rights abuses in China, and now is starting to grow here. Make sure to go to the Epoch Times website and check out the California section, where you can get a lot of fresh perspectives on what's going on in California. Now let's go back to the interview. Now, when kids were using their phones, what would they do with them?
A lot of times they were on social media. They were also texting each other, and so we had a lot, especially with
in class, right?
And we also had a lot of middle schoolers in different rooms texting and meeting up at the bathroom because they had that way to communicate. We also had students, if any kind of idea of a physical fight was going to break out on our campus, the rumor spread really fast, and those cell phones were on the ready. Like, these kids were ready to videotape so they could push it up to social media and spread it. There was a lot of cyberbullying going on. Our students would take random weird photos of each other and post them on these mean burn accounts, and it just was a lot of social and emotional drama going on our campus, and us trying to chase it when it was already out of hand. I mean, now without cell phones, if we get any kind of knowledge that something's going on, we can dig in before it spreads through the kids first. There's just a lot of lack of interaction between the students. They would be huddled around their phone watching something, or just on their one-on-one on their phone, and so there was no playing on the playground. You wouldn't see basketball games or four-square games or kickball games going on. You would find just students in little groupings or by themselves hanging out around a phone. So whether they were watching, of course we didn't always get to see what they were doing, because the minute an adult would walk up to them, they would put it away. So that was always an idea that something that probably wasn't supposed to be going on was going on.
So the social kind of fabric kind of was broken.
It was broken. I mean, especially after the pandemic, that just added a whole nother layer of non-interaction. Our students forgot how to problem solve, how to socially interact with each other, how to developmentally, learn how to create friendships. I mean, new students were lost because when you're a new student on campus, you at least have other students trying to bring you into the fold. With cell phones on campus, we weren't having that either after the pandemic. We were having social isolation, a lot of isolation on our campus. And even though we were having to do distancing and all that kind of stuff when we first came back, it just was, the feeling on campus was we were not a family anymore. We were very disjointed and divided, and there wasn't, the relationship building was almost non-existent. Teachers would try, and students were just not were receiving that. So taking the cell phones kind of forced people to talk again, have eye-to-eye contact, and play games together and make friends.
Did you see any pushback?
Not at the beginning. We actually made this decision without parent input. We chose to do it with just staff input, because at that point we were doing this for the betterment of our students and our staff, not necessarily the families. We had a lot of communication before we started the school year last year, letting parents know this was a new policy on campus. I think because of the amount of communication we did, everyone was in the know, and they knew that we were not going to have any warnings when they stepped on campus that first day. We were hitting the ground running, and all staff would be, paying attention. And when we first started taking cell phones away last year, we would have some kids saying, but you can't, and we would just continue to show them the new policy, tell them what their options are, show them what the offenses and how they, the consequences grow. Educating our families, I think, really helped. So the pushback wasn't that great. By the end of the year, we had only those 2 kids that traveled all the way to the 6th offense. We had, I think, a total of like 80-something kids who had one offense only, and it just slowly dropped down from there.
That's out of 400 something.
450 students, 83 students had their first offense last year. Like I said, it's already slower this year than it was last year.
So they were able to change, like essentially the habit.
Yeah, and a couple of our parents that I have talked to since the beginning of this school year has said about what they feel this has done for their child. She told me that she sees an engagement in her child back with his academics that she did not see before we took the cell phone. And a couple of our parents are also staff members and said their children are now, a habit is in place after a whole year that as soon as they approach the campus, they throw their cell phone in their mom's purse and go on their way without even a discussion. So I think just training our kids that this is just a new habit, a new way of doing things. We really haven't had much pushback, but we are also a smaller school, so it's easy to communicate with our entire population pretty fast.
You mentioned that the kids were not interacting much with each other.
Right.
The phone was in the center of what they were doing. Did things change after you guys banned
Oh,
the
yes,
phones?
absolutely. When you walk on our campus now, kids are being kids again. You see the basketball games, the kickball games, the Foursquare. You see kids actually playing on the playground equipment. They're interacting, they're creating new friendships and relationships. The students in the classrooms are now engaged in the lessons more. The teachers are feeling their engagement more. We haven't necessarily seen a difference in their academic performance after a year. I mean, there's a lot of things going on besides the cell phone thing going on, but we're hoping that we're going to start seeing academic performance increases. One of the pieces of research shows that when a cell phone goes off in the classroom, it takes about 23 minutes to refocus. If you think about
23 minutes.
23 minutes to refocus. And that was when we started telling our parents that our middle school classes are only 50 minutes long. And if it takes 23 minutes to refocus that's even if they don't interact, if they just hear the buzz or the ding.
Wow.
That's a half a class period for them to refocus. And that's not just the person who has the phone, that's the person sitting next to the person with the phone. So that alone, that piece of research blew us away. I mean, we were feeling it, we were seeing it, but we didn't know the data behind it. If you think about us as adults and the addiction we have to our own cell phones and the lack of self-control we as adults have about putting that cell phone down and realizing we don't need it at our side all day long, we have to be able to teach our kids that there's boundaries and that they can make it through a day without their cell phone being on them. I'm hoping that we're training these students to have new habits that me personally are struggling with. Cell phone addiction is a real thing, and I think that if we can find some way to help our students find those boundaries and that self-control, I think we're doing everybody a favor.